On this episode, we have two of the titans or legends in the Nordic ecosystem. And I know they're both super busy because it's been somewhat of a nightmare to making sure that we got both of them on this call. What's happening in the world of Sophia right now?
I don't know. I think there's normally a bit slower during the summer month, but not this year. I still kind of see founders and so many people are building. So I would say busy as one can be.
Nice. Good. We'll dive more into that in a second. And then from the, I don't marry if you're in a neighboring country, but welcoming Marianne Vikkula also on the call as well. How are you doing?
At least a nearby country. Doing well. Really excited to start a short 5-day holiday tomorrow after a really busy spring.
Yeah, it's great. The summertime is picking up. It's been a crazy couple of months, I think, for all. How are you guys? Any great summer plans? Are you able to pull off the plug completely, or are you somewhat still working over the course of summer?
Happy to start. I'll be on and off. This time, no 4-week Nordic holiday for me. So 5 days there, a week there. But that's fine. I've kind of learned that a week per quarter suits me better than a year and then 4 weeks out. So that's my strategy.
That sounds like a brilliant one. I have a similar one. And every now and then I escape out to Pelago, to a remote island to go offline a bit.
Yeah, so I'm probably the odd one here then, because I am basically pulling the plug for multiple weeks, but somewhat still working. But yeah, it's good to get some decent iron out. So today's episode is about a topic that I find really interesting, both from an operating perspective, but what I assume also from an investment perspective. It's a matter of conviction. Both conviction in regards of joining an early stage startup, but also conviction from an investor perspective, where you find conviction in deploying capital into new teams or just the formation of an idea. And maybe, Marianne, we can kick it off with you, because you, from what I think what you're most known for is obviously your stint at Slush, but also joining Wolt somewhat early on into what seems like a really wild journey. So I'm keen to hear your maybe a twofold point of conviction in both the Slush journey, and then later on also to take on the opportunity to be joining Wolt on that super impressive journey.
I wish the story was more full of conviction that the truth might be. So if I start with Slush, that today is, the biggest gathering of venture capital in the world, but it hasn't always been so. So my first Slush was volunteering in 2012. It was like a 3,000 person event probably, and I had no idea what I joined to do. I was just like a 20-year-old student, and it was a cool thing to do. And, years went by. I ended up in the full-time team, running finance, later sales, later leading the entire conference. It actually still does the chairperson of the event. But initially, it really was no idea what I signed up for. But the thing that made me convicted and stay was really the learning opportunity, the fact that you were just like, I'm 21 and I can handle a budget of millions. Where else do you do that as a 21-year-old? So that's what kind of brought me to the startup world. And then obviously the people I got to learn from, got to meet people like Sophia, who was already then building Spotify. And you're like, wow, these people are doing super cool things. So this tech startup world seems to be amazing. Hence I've stayed ever since. And then my transition to Wolt. So when I joined, Wolt was a Series B stage company, 6 countries, 100 people. And I joined to lead our expansion efforts. And why I chose to do that after Slush, I considered a lot of options. Should I do VC? Should I set up a company of my own? But ultimately, I realized that, hey, I was probably 25, 26, something like that. And I felt like the best thing I can do now is to learn more how to scale companies. I wanted to go somewhere where I can kind of be part of a rocket ship that's being built while flying the rocket. Ideally consumer. I wanted to kind of understand how do you build consumer companies and learn from better people than I am. And that was what brought me to Wolt.
no regrets. I assume it's been quite a journey to follow from the outside.
And zero regrets. Zero regrets. Yes.
So Sophia, if we turn over to you, I think you are probably for a long time at least known for joining Spotify before anyone knew what it was. So could you talk us through just joining super early and what made you believe like joining Daniel on his journey?
Yeah, happy to. But first of all, I just wanted to comment on Marianne when you were the CEO of Slush and I was an attendee. I was so inspired by you and I love Slush to bits because it is the best event ever organized. And I also find it so empowering that it's done by people like yourself in their 20s, putting this massive thing together. So I think that has done so much for the ecosystem in the Nordics. And I think more countries should learn from it. But just wanted to give that shout out.
Appreciated.
And then on my journey on how to come to the decision to join Spotify, I think looking back at the time, I was then working as a PR consultant for a communications firm called Prime PR. And back then, it wasn't really sexy or exciting to join a startup. The word was not really used in Stockholm at the time. So I didn't really thought it was a great opportunity. I actually said to Daniel, no, I love my job. I don't want to quit because I thought it was kind of cool to be a PR consultant. And I love my colleagues. And I had the best boss at the time. Also, big shout out to Carl Fredrik Semeli and Per Hansen. So I actually tried to sell Daniel and Martin that they should hire me 1 day per week as a consultant. That was my kind of idea from the beginning. But I ended up joining full time, which of course today I'm very, very glad that I decided to do. And I think one of the tipping points was, first I should also say that I had good opportunities to reference the guys because my older brother had worked for Martin when he built Tradedoubler. And then my cousin had built a company where he hired Daniel as a 14-year-old because at the time in Sweden, he was known as the genius, like a whiz kid doing organic search. So I could reference them from my older brother and my cousin, and both of them said, whatever happens, these guys are incredibly smart. So even if you don't, succeed in building this company, you will learn a ton from these two people. So that was kind of in the back of my mind. And then we had a meeting at 4:00 on a Friday afternoon, and I was planning to go to this dinner later on, but we had so much fun and so much to talk about, and they were sharing the vision for the company's future. And then we kind of just lost track of time, and all of a sudden it was 9:00 in the evening, and I had missed my dinner, and time just flew by because I was so blown away by them when they were kind of talking about the product vision and all the things that we could do. So I think that was the day that I was like, all right, this is too exciting not to join. I have no idea, what the outcome will be, but worst case scenario, if we go bankrupt in 6 months, I can go back and be a PR consultant. That was my thinking at the time.
So I think for both of you, in when you look back, I think you both have and have amazing careers. That just kicking it off with those journeys, but definitely a big part of the journeys that you had forward on. Sophia, if we started with you, so joining that journey and being impressed by their ambition and the overall mission of Spotify. I'm sure you echo Marianne also having no regrets, but I'm sure also during the journey that there must have been doubts along the journey where you're like, okay, was this right for me? Did I pick the right choice? Are we sure we know what we're doing? Can you kind of talk us through if you had any of those moments along the Spotify journey initially?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's never like a smooth sailing like this. It's always a roller coaster, I think on many different levels, both for me personally, but also for the company. And I feel like part of the job is to, shut down fires. And we were constantly paranoid and scared of competition. So sometimes when I describe my Spotify years, and no one did this to me, this was self-imposed, but I felt like a knife against my throat because of the stress of the competitors and all of the things that we were constantly doing. We were, to Marianne's comparison, we were kind of building an airplane while being in the air, and we were doing everything at the same time. We were developing product, we were hiring up and doubling the size and team, and we were launching in new markets, and we were raising capital, and we were negotiating with the licensing deals all at the same time. So the stress is immense, but I think the the colleagues. I mean, we had such great camaraderie in the team. So you kind of feel like you are supporting each other in all of the ups and downs and the laughters and the moments when you feel like you want to cry. But to your point of like personal doubts, maybe a year into my journey, we were still kind of the joke was kind of that I was the only one who couldn't code. I mean, we had the lawyer who also didn't code and maybe another 2-3 people, but it was a very, very tech and product led company. So for me coming in, talking about a marketing plan or brand positioning and key messaging, that was not super appreciated among some of the people that were like, no, we're building the matrix of music. We don't need that kind of makeup. We don't need marketing. So I had a bit of a struggle in the beginning to kind of find my footing and find a position that actually marketing is important. And how do I make sure I get a budget to a team and why does it make sense? So I remember kind of early on doing a 12-slide presentation to the team, kind of explaining what is a brand and why do people want to pay more for one brand compared to another and why should Spotify build a brand. So, I mean, I had a bit of a up and down kind of journey the first year. But then as we grow and I had a bigger team and we hired up and it was kind of, proven to be the right decision to build a consumer brand, then of course it all felt super fun and I could just go on and execute. But yeah, not easy. I mean, it was the most fun journey ever in my life, but not at all easy. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as they say.
But think about the end result of that being portrayed in a Netflix series, right? That's a proper proper check mark on your bucket list.
That is a bit surreal, I agree. And I must say to that show, like it was interesting to watch, but reality was way more crazy. I'm like the uncensored version would be more fun.
Yeah, the war stories of a startup is that's probably someone should do a podcast about that because that's always really 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 exciting to hear the actual stories. What about you, Marianne? Did you had any like positive epiphanies during the journey or surprises where you're like, what did I get myself into?
All the time. I don't think I had a day of doubt whether this was the right decision or if the company's going to make it. I joined at a time when we kind of started being at a point where like we will make it. But like, did we go through completely crazy situations you never thought you would go through in your life? Absolutely. I mean, a few examples would be, without boring everyone with a lot of detail, when you expand to 20 countries across Europe and Asia, the countries are quite different. And you need to start dealing with people like national banks who regulate how currencies grow cross-border, a lot of different local authorities, allergen authorities, and you're like, wow, we need to do a lot of localization. And then one day, the national bank just might show up the office and be like, you don't think what you do is right. They're like, ready? Okay, let's change then. Or when COVID happens, they're trying to expand in Japan and Japan blocks its borders for more than a year. You're like, all right, how do we lead an expansion operation 7 hours away from Japan yeah, in Finland? So a bunch of situations where there was no playbook and then you just had to figure it out.
How do you think as that evolves? Like, do your conviction get stronger? Are you able to use your own conviction to hand that over to new colleagues coming in or using that as a tool of recruiting? How do you think about that, Marianne, as you were scaling Wolt from something and then really hyper scaling it?
Yeah, so I mean, especially growth stage companies are ultimately recruiting machines. Age of AI, a little less, but still, like, your people make it or break it. That's what it is. And as a leader, I think that's one of your biggest jobs is to hire people who are better than you. And what I really learned along the way was, one, having this humility that every hire you make, you try to find someone who's better than you, someone you can learn from. And then two, nobody knows who you are. So you need to sell. Like, recruiting is not a buying game where you wait for applications to come in and then you choose one of the people who applied, but you really need to go out there and talk to people and sell the dream. Especially in our case, when I remember we were expanding to Prague, nobody knew Wolt. Nobody had any idea what we're doing. So I was sitting in different cafes, making orders from Prague to Helsinki, demoing our product, being like, we optimize everything every 10 seconds or whatever it was back in the days to make people really excited about like, okay, this company's pretty cool. And only after that you can start like, okay, now let's test if the candidate is the right one for us. But you really need to radiate the optimism and the belief into what you're building, because if you're not excited, how do you get the others excited?
Yeah, it's a tough sell then. So, Sophia, if we then kind of take that even further to your kind of the change that you went through going from an operator to now an investor, how do you look for conviction when you're deploying capital into early stage companies?
Yeah, I am 100% with you, Marianne, when it comes to that conviction. And I think that is one of the things that as an investor you look for, because as you say, if you are not hyper excited about this opportunity, you can't expect, people you hire or investors to be more excited than you are. Like, you need to be the one who's the champion and who really can explain why this matters to the world. So I think, so back at Spotify, I think that was what everyone was, the soul of everyone working there was filled up with this conviction. Everyone was super bullish. And that is a really energetic environment and culture to be in. And I think that is almost infectious when you meet, if it's partner companies, if it is investors, top tier, board members, whatever you want to recruit, like that needs to be in place. So when I meet founders today, it is a hard thing to kind of, put your finger on. It's more like something I experience and I recognize it's when it's there. And I think normally it's tied to when someone has kind of almost like found something that they feel like, oh, no one else has discovered this thing, but I see it and I have some sort of skill set that makes me the right person to build this thing that no one else has yet understood is super important. And then they like explain why, and then I can sense if they're excited. I think it's a very big difference if you meet someone that has that excitement versus someone who's like, yeah, I saw this model in the US, we're doing it in Sweden, we want to replicate it to 3 markets and then sell it. Like, then it's a more transactional, yes, sort of execution play. But when someone is on fire, then they can move mountains and they can recruit people and attract investors. Then it's a whole different energy level. That's what I look for.
Do you feel it's the opposite sometimes, that you have to persuade companies because in the world of like AI native companies, I assume that it's competitive being an investor also. So sometimes I would think that the kind of tables are turned where you're the one kind of almost pitching the startup that they should have conviction in you as an investor.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, same for us. We need to sell ourselves every day. It's a hard game out there. You need to pitch to the founder why you are the right partner to team up with. Money is very generic and uninteresting in the end of the day. It's the partner that they need to choose. They need to want to work with you. They need to feel like, all right, I think this is a person who is nice to have by my side when things will be chaotic and hectic and difficult. And I think that's interesting. Like, how do you foster a relationship and deep connection in a short space of time? And I think that comes back to then you want to know some of the best operators even before they start their company so that you have that advantage. So I think, we need to also, of course, sell ourselves so that the founder gets conviction on us. I mean, it's a very, very competitive game. So that's what we do all days.
Yeah. And I mean, that's very, very similar to what it's like to hire true top talent.
Yes.
You fly people into the market. It's like, whether it's building Spotify in Stockholm, I'm sure you flew in a lot of people. Be like,
Oh,
Stockholm
yes.
is a great city. Come and see it. And it's like full selling mode. Of course, you need to also buy that the person is the right person, but it's both ways. It's not a one-way street.
And then I think it's about selling the mission you're on. So I remember when I moved to New York City to set up the office there, and in the same building as we had our office, we had the Google headquarters in New York. And of course, when hiring engineers, they are like showering them with money and free vacations. And we have 7 restaurants in our office. And then we had like, we're an office of 20 people. But I think then my pitch was like, all right, do you want to be part of maintaining a search engine? Or do you want to be part of creating music history here and now and shaping the future of music history? And then I think you can almost suss out who are the ones that are excited about building rather than just nurturing something that exists. But I think conviction for me, the earlier in the journey of a founder that you are able to get involved, for me, it's more exciting. When I look at companies that are like, yeah, everything is proven, then the risk is much lower. So then for me, the bet is not as bold, so to speak. Like, I really love to be early and back someone almost at the stage where they're like, have an idea. Like, I had a meeting yesterday and I was so excited after the meeting, and this guy had left his job 4 days ago and he's been building in his spare time, and he showed me the demo. There's not even a name on the company, and I'm like, this is exciting to me. And it was because of that founder market fit and the opportunity and some of the things that made him a very good person to potentially succeed in what he was set out to do. And I get excited about being the first check-in. That, I think, is like, it's an honor to be able to support someone when no one else does.
Trying to bring in people and recruit top talent is also different from the different stages you're in the company's journey. So I recall going to an investor event with Daniel Ek a few years ago, and he spoke about people trying to recruit people from Spotify. And he said, look, we know he's super proud about Spotify being a great place of stealing talent from, but he also reminded everyone that people should be aware of the different vintages of people that they were trying to bring over. So you have people from the formative phase, you have people from the growth phase, and you have people from the more saturated phase where it's more like operational and steady growth year over year. So Marianne, how do you change, if you change your way of inviting people of joining the Wolt journey in those different phases, from being a smaller startup to then a scale up to a full hyper scaling business to now, being one of the global dominators in your industry?
I'm totally with Daniel with this one, that you need different kinds of skills for different phases. Some people can scale and want to scale and kind of change themselves is maybe a strong word, but kind of learn the next stage with the company. But then there's a lot of people who are simply like, I'm an early stage builder. I don't want to be there when it's starting to get more structured, and I want the chaos. And that's perfect, because then those companies are the companies. Those people are the ones who go on and build the next thing and the next thing. And they're like that's the founder factory, the alumni who go and build the next thing. So to me, it's kind of felt like with the rapid growth we've had, that something's broken all the time. And then you as a leader just simply need to prioritize where are the most broken things, where you need to go and recruit the next stage of talent who can come and build those things. Initially, it's like, you probably need a finance function. You're probably start needing a people function at a point in time when you're like some hundreds of people. But then can something else wait? Security, maybe it can wait a little longer, and then you build that later down the line. And I don't know if this was the best strategy, but a strategy we have taken is kind of like listening to the pain. So we went quite often with the, like, when it starts getting too painful, then that's the right time to kind of go and build the next chapter, bring in the next talent. I think you could also choose a strategy where you try to hire ahead of the problem, but I think the challenge has been, we are all like young and figuring this out as we built this. We've never seen world class, whether it's finance or HR or security before. So the best way for you as a leader to know what you truly need is like when you're amidst a problem, you're like, okay, this is fire, and I need someone to come and fix the fire, because you're trying to deal with the fire yourself actively. And that helps you immensely in recruiting for the next stage, because then you're literally like, okay, these questions need answers for right now. And then you know better what to go and look for, because it's quite easy to get fooled by fancy titles and track records, and even like the biggest companies. Exactly what Daniel said. It's like hiring for Wolt, right? But like, what stage of the journey were they? What did they build themselves versus did they just come into a setup that was already built and then they manage it? And are you looking for a builder or a manager? You really need to understand what you need deeply and then go after that experience.
I think it's funny to see that. I think you mentioned titles there, Marianne, and it's cool to see that the world has become somewhat more humble with that title hierarchy recently. Just looking at some of the frontier models of some of the new labs, that titles are more all the way down to like member of technical staff. No more titles of SVP, this and that. It's super complicated to see who's who from the outside. So I think the title hierarchy is at a minimum evaporating a bit. Look, so I'll probably change this podcast now to be a personal motivational session from me taking input from the two of you. But I have had a few experiences recently that made me think about kind of where the world of technology is going right now. I've been engaged with a lot of investors recently, and two of them called me an old founder. Which was which I don't, and they didn't smile when they said so. So I felt like they did. They really meant it. Um, and that I kind of connected that to, we had a session with one of the Zendesk founders in Copenhagen a while ago, and he said, look, when they were getting Zendesk off the ground, just getting a website live and spinning off a server was shy of impossible. Like, it took so much effort. And then when you finally went live, and if you were really lucky, you could also raise a bit of money. And then when you went live after that tremendously long line of hassles, you were like one of a few going lives, and you almost touched the success already, right? Changing that completely to the current time we find ourselves in, where you can spin up a full company, a full customer-facing application in a minute. But then when you go live, you're like one of 1,000. And conviction is not just for hiring people or for bringing in great investors aboard. Conviction is obviously also for clients. Like, how do you get conviction to customers to come join you, being one of 1,000 apps? Wolt is an awesome product, just to start with Wolt, right? But it's also in a really competitive landscape. So how do you change the operating model from being in a landscape of few competitors to now being a landscape of a gazillion competitors and new ones popping live on a weekly basis almost? How should founders think about that, being in that competitive landscape now? Maybe your thoughts first, Marianne.
Yeah, super good question. I mean, starting off with like where you started with this kind of old founder being young, I think it's first of all awesome to see super young people going and building companies themselves. This was not the case 15 years ago, like not at all. So there's been a tremendous change and what people want to go and build, which is mainly a positive thing, because that's what I truly think we need for Nordic and European welfare to continue flourishing. So I'm very excited to see that and support that. And even the, people joining these next generation companies, whether it's Lovable, Agora, being there for a few years and then already going and doing the next thing. It's super exciting to me to see and follow. But then at the same time, there comes a phase where, at least I believe, that no matter what the attitude and the energy, you also just need to bring in the experience and the talent. Just like, I talked about the challenges we had at Wolt. Regardless of how much technology kind of makes things more efficient, you still need a finance function. You still need, an HR function. So there's for sure room for experience as well. But I think the thing that everybody needs to acknowledge is that the world is changing so rapidly that if you're not on top of the new tech that comes up literally every week, you're going to fall behind. So there's room for experienced operators, but you just need to be able to build with the new tech.
What's your thoughts, Sophia? You with a background as a marketeer and now being an investor also, how you found to think about operating in the current landscape?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting question, and I think you can make comparison to the music industry. Like before, it wasn't that many albums that was released per month, and now you have a couple of 100,000 songs released every day on Spotify. So to break through the noise and launch as a new artist or as a new startup or a new consumer brand, it's much, much harder. So I think that's also partly why we've seen that some people in the investor community are not as excited about direct-to-consumer investment opportunities, because it is super hard to kind of break through. I am still very excited, and I think you can be either paralyzed by the difficulty of the situation, or you can just have a laser focus on, if you build something that the users love. I think that's the core of it all. If you have that, then you're on the right track, and then you need to, as Marianne said, work with the best people in the industry that are in the forefront of the latest, the newest technology, so that you understand the little hacks that you can do now. And I think there are plenty of interesting opportunities to kind of get your brand out there and get people to talk about it, and to get the noise reduced and your products to be top of mind. But I think it all comes down to having, users that loves your product and that wants to talk about it, and then implement a lot of the different features that makes it easy for them to talk about it in whatever channel.
Getting that product is probably the most important thing of them all, right? So I think, look, so we find ourselves here now sitting across 3 different Nordic countries. And I think my overall ambition about this pod is also to bring the Nordics a bit closer as more one coherent region. So maybe starting with you, Marianne, can you give us your perspective on what's the superpowers of a combined Nordic region? Like, what do we have here across the Nordic countries that are super unique from a competitive point of view? And what are the downsides then? What's the challenge from the Nordic mindset?
Well, from the Wolt experience, what I can tell is that I would say we've definitely more benefited than having had a downside from coming from a Nordic country. Why? All of our countries are at the global scale, fairly small. We're not, highly populated. So we had to figure out from day one, if we want to build a globally remarkable business, how do we do that? Like, what's the global mindset? So there was no way for us to build for just one market. Like, Finland isn't big enough. So that origin helped us build a very efficient business that's quickly scalable across the board. Also, all the different languages. We had to build capabilities from day one to serve tens of different languages, which wouldn't necessarily be the case if you're founded, for example, in an English-speaking country, because your market is like 1 billion people plus. So you don't even need to think about things like that. And then on the downside, I'm not sure if there's that many. Of course, yes, there's the reality that the Nordics are well known for work-life balance and the long holidays. Could we have moved sometimes faster in another type of a culture? Maybe, but then again, I feel like we always found people who are so excited to build that they were ready to do whatever it took. So it was more a matter of kind of hiring the right talent than that everybody in the Nordics would have the same mentality. And having said that, like, the point that I'm trying to make is not that, you need to work. I don't even remember these frameworks that have recently come out of like 6 days a week, 9 hours a day, or 12 hours a day type of stuff.
996. 996.
Yeah, 996. Like that's not what I'm going after. But I also think that building a company is more than, you come in at 9 and close your laptop at 5, and next day is the next day, and you don't you need to take more ownership than that. But there's a way to do it balanced.
What do you think, Sophia?
Oh, I agree. And I think one of my lessons learned from when sort of setting up the US operations and launching Spotify there was that the big difference in both management styles and also this work-life balance and, yes, the way society is structured. And I think the fact that we have, at least in Sweden, a social welfare system in place, and that as an individual, your health insurance is not tied to your employment, I think that's healthy. And I think the better people are feeling about their lives, like, all right, I'm not worried about healthcare for my family, I have my salary, that it creates a better environment. I think what I saw in the US, it's much tougher there with like the feeling of the knife against your throat. Like you can be fired on the day for no reason. And with that then goes the health insurance for you and your family. Like that is terrifying. And when people are terrified, and I was leading a creative team, so I was used to bouncing ideas and questioning stuff and throwing things at the wall and like trying different things. And after a while, I was like, why are people not questioning me more? Why are they like sucking up to me? And then, all right, maybe it's they're super nervous about getting fired in a way that I had never experienced before. And then looking at just the social structure of the society, that I think explains parts of it. And I don't think that's healthy. And I do believe that, as I said, if people are feeling good and feel safe, then they create the best output. So that was one recollection. I forgot the question. Was it like the pros and cons with the Nordic culture? Or, yeah, I think the work-life balance, the setup is a strength. And then maybe if there's some weaknesses, maybe that we're sometimes a bit naive and thinking like a handshake is a handshake and you stick to your word. And in some cultures, it's a bit more, rough and strategic and manipulative than that. But I do think, and I don't want it to be otherwise here, I think believing good in people fosters that frequency in the room, rather than if you walk in and you're paranoid and think that you're going to get screwed, then that fosters a different type of energy in the room. And of course, going in with like, yeah, let's do this together is much more sound, and the likelihood of a great partnership is then bigger, of course. So I think slightly naive is actually a good thing.
Yeah, well, I can definitely share that experience of having. There are for sure cultures where people are like Nordics are very trust based.
Yes.
Extremely trust based. You don't need to have everything in writing, and people still do what they say. That's not always the modus operandi. The further you go out, so watch out.
Yes.
I think
Agreed.
look, I think that's a great way of ending today's conversation of the very trustworthy Nordic countries, where a word is a word. So it was really such a pleasure speaking with both of you, and I hope both of you have an awesome summer, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in person on the other side of, for me, a very long summer break, and from you guys just a few days off and then back to the grind, right?
Well, thank you so much for having us. This was a true pleasure, and always so lovely to meet you both.
Likewise, enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank
you
you.
too.